Hello, Amtgarders. My name is Ruby. I also go by Aurora the Rainbow Druid, and I have recently been appointed as the Guildmaster of Druids for the Barony of Dark Lodge Crossing. My goal with this video and with future videos is to talk about how to play the Druid class, to give people a resource to understand how spells work, in general in Amtgard, even with other classes, as well as some magic theory in later videos. But for this video only, we're going to be talking about the equipment you need to play as a druid and your first level spells. Okay, so first things first, I have my handy dandy spell book here. So now spell book, you don't have to have a book in particular. I generally like to carry my phone on the battlefield. Not everybody likes to because your phone can get damaged. But you need to keep your spell book on you, however you write it down, at all times when playing a battle game. Because if a Reeve questions you on whether or not you are a high enough level for a specific spell, or you've cast a spell too many times, you will need your spell book to say whether or not that is true or false. Now, mind you, you always generally want to side with your Reeve, take the corrective feedback with honor, and then if it's an issue, just deal with it after the battle game. So let's get started. So first things first, you want to play Druid. You're level 1 Druid. You're going to need a brown class sash. Now, how I usually like to make my sashes is I will use a double metal loop so I can cinch them down. I don't like them flying around. It's really easy to make one. You need to stitch a strip of fabric. You want to make it probably about 3 feet long, depending on your size, maybe 3.5. And then you want to feed it through the metal loops after sewing them on, of course, and then you can cinch it tight. That way it's not flying around everywhere. You're not proficient with any armor as a first level druid. That's okay though, you get magic armor spells. But we'll talk about that here in a minute, because you can't actually, this is the special thing about druids, you can't cast a lot of your spells on yourself. Your whole job as a druid is to buff your party. You are there to assist other players and can kind of control the battlefield as well. So you're assisting you're buffing your players and debuffing your enemies, okay? Shields, you're not proficient with any shields to start. You can buy proficiency later, but we'll talk about that in a different video. The weapons you're proficient with, you are proficient with daggers and magic staffs. Daggers are pretty self-explanatory, but magic staffs, they are a 6-foot, generally, staff. You can make them shorter if you want. And they're covered in courtesy padding all the way through the weapon. It doesn't have to be strike legal, just courtesy padding, because you're not going to be hitting anybody with a magic staff. You can only use it to defend yourself. However, you can hang on to a magic staff to cast your spells, like an actual magic staff in fantasy settings. You can't do this with any other item. If you want to cast a spell, you must have a free hand, generally. So if you have a shield in one hand and a dagger in the other, you got to put that dagger away so you can cast your spells. But if you use the magic staff to defend yourself, either by blocking sword blows, so on and so forth, you can still use that magic staff to cast a spell. So, moving on. You get 5 points per level of Druid for spellcasting. And this is true for any spellcasting class, Bard, Healer, Wizard. You get 5 points per level. And you get 1 extra point if you look at the part per your Reeve's discretion. So if you look like a druid, you'll get 6 points, but it's only at your highest level. So say you're level 2, you get 5 for first level, 6 for second level. And same thing going all the way up. If you're a 6th level druid like me, you get 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at 6th level, you would have 6 points. These points can round down. I will do this sometimes with spell strategization, which we will again talk about in a later video. So if you have 5 points in second level and 5 points in first level, but you only use 3 points for second level spells, you can round them down to first level. And as long as you have all those points on your spell book whenever you present it to the Reeve before battle games, they should generally work out. Just remember, you can only round down, you cannot round up. Okay? All right, now we're going to move on to the first spell in the rulebook for Druid, and that is Barkskin. Now, Barkskin is a spell. It's an enchantment, so there's different kinds of spells. Enchantment is one of them. That means that you are putting a buff on another player, or generally on yourself, depending on your class. For Druids, again, you're buffing your other players. You're buffing your friends. For Barkskin, you will need a white spell strip. Generally, these are about 6 inches long, 2 inches wide. I like to sew mine with a hair tie, so you can either put it on somebody's wrist, or if you want to tie it into their belt loop, you can loop it through like this. Okay? Now, the incantation for Barkskin is I enchant thee with Barkskin 3 times, and you want to say this audible out to 20 feet at least. This is for any spell that you're casting. So I enchant thee with Barkskin, I enchant thee with Barkskin, I enchant thee with Barkskin. Now the range is other, so you have to be touching that person. You can either touch them with your foot, or you can touch them with a hand if they're consenting. You put a hand on their shoulder or something, and you say this enchantment. And then you put that, you either give the white strip to them or put it on their equipment, and it gives them 1 point of magic armor. Now, how magic armor works versus actual armor. Actual armor only protects what it's touching. So if you have a chest armor, but your sides are exposed, somebody could stab you there and get a torso shot. Magic armor envelops your entire body. Now, this can get confusing with, oh, I have 1 point of magic armor covering my entire body. Does that mean I only have 1 point? I can get hit once and then it's all gone? No. Magic armor is you get 1 point in each location. So 1 point on arms, 1 point on torso, 1 point on legs. So you can get hit 1 point everywhere before you actually start taking a wound. Now I know that can be confusing as well. So say that you get hit in the arm, 1 point off arm. Somebody hits you again, that arm is gone. You gotta tuck it away. Okay? Alrighty. Moving on to cost. So Barkskin costs 1 point, and you can have a maximum of 2 of them. So if you are going to bring 2 Barkskins, you want to bring 2 white strips as well. Otherwise, you can only cast 1 at a time. And now they're used once per refresh. So if you cast them, like say you bring 2 onto the field and you cast each of them, you cannot cast them again until a Reeve calls for a refresh. Okay? Meaning that you get all refresh spells are regained. Now, the Barkskin also has charge 10 to get a Barkskin back before a refresh. That is using the charge incantation, which we will cover in a later video. But if you say the charge incantation 10 times, then you can get 1 back instead of waiting for a refresh. This is a school of protection. Generally, that doesn't matter on the school unless somebody has an immunity to that school. So if somebody is immune to fire, fire spells do not affect them. Somebody is immune to death, death spells do not affect them. Okay, moving on. We have the next spell in the first level, which is Entangle. So now Entangle is a magic ball spell. So that is where you actually have to have a ball that you are going to throw at somebody. Now I generally like my magic balls to be pretty large. I have large hands. But generally what it is a foam ball with no core that has at least a 6-inch tail coming off of it. And it has to be a specific color and recognized as that specific color and cannot be confused for anything else. So for Entangle, you need a brown magic ball. So, it is of the Subdual school. Some classes are immune to Subdual. I know Barbarians are. The incant for this spell is the Strength of Earth is mine to evoke. And you say this 3 times. Strength of Earth is mine to evoke, Strength of Earth is mine to evoke, Strength of Earth is mine to evoke. And you have to throw it at somebody and it has to hit them. It can hit them anywhere. It can hit their weapon, it can hit their shield, it can hit them anywhere. Once it hits them, it's engulfing. Okay? It's going to affect them regardless. So and that target player is stopped for 60 seconds. So this doesn't mean they're frozen. They just can't move their feet. So They can still hit you, they can still attack you, so be careful if somebody has a long weapon, but generally you can sneak up behind them and stab them in the back. Cost for this is 1 point per 2 magic balls. Now this is important, because unlike Bark Skin, where you only get once per refresh, once you use it, it's gone until you get a refresh, you can pick up your magic balls off the ground and use them again. What the point cost is the maximum number of spell balls you can bring onto the field. So if you spend, and the maximum for this is 2 points, if you spend 2 points, you can bring 4 magic balls. You can use them as much as you want, as long as you're picking them up off the ground. All right, moving on. Our next spell is not a spell, actually. It's what we were talking about before with buying equipment. You can purchase a short sword or a short weapon to be able to use on the battlefield. Now, it's a little tricky, and it took me a long time to understand this. When you spend points on this, you can only wield 1 of that item, unless you spend more points. So the maximum for equipment short is 2, because guess what? You only have 2 hands. You can only wield 2 weapons. You can carry as many as you want, say if somebody shoots an arrow and destroys one of your swords. But you can only wield as many as you buy. So if you only buy 1, you can only wield 1 short sword. Okay? So now the point cost for that is... I believe it's 2 points, but I'll have to double check because I forgot to write it down. But there's a point cost for it. Once you purchase it, again, you can only wield 1 of those. The next spell on the list is actually a meta magic spell. Now, all spellcasters have meta magic spells, and what they do is they affect other spells. So it's not necessarily something you're casting. It is you're changing how a spell behaves. Now, the first one at first level is experienced, and you have to say ahead of time which spell you want to say you are experienced in. And it changes its frequency and how often you can use it. So if the original spell was once per life for frequency, it now has charge 5 in addition to its once per life. So once per life, and if you say the charge incantation 5 times, you can use it again once per life. And it's the same thing if it's once per refresh. You can say the charge incantation 10 times and get it back once per refresh. You can only use this on spells of 4th level or lower, and you can only carry a maximum of 2 experienced spells. And the cost for these is 2. So if you spend 4 points, then you can get 2 experienced spells. Typically, I like to have 1 experienced spell, and I like to combine it with another meta magic, but we'll cover that again in a later video. The next spell is Heat Weapon. Now, this is what we were talking about before with debuffing your enemies. So, Heat Weapon is a verbal spell. There's no equipment that's necessary for this. So, if you haven't had time to sew any spell strips or there's none to borrow, Heat Weapon is a great spell to start with. It has a distance of 20 feet. Now, this is familiar because you have to be audible out to 20 feet. So generally verbal spells are going to be about 20 feet away from you. It is of the flame school. So again, if people are immune to flame, this won't affect them, but not in the sense that everybody thinks. You're not casting this spell on a person. You're casting it on their weapon. So if they want to hand that weapon to somebody else and they're not immune to flame, they can't wield it, because that sword is now on fire, basically. The incant for this is a call upon flame to heat that weapon type. Now, I will catch myself doing this when I'm casting a spell. I call upon flame to heat that short sword. I call upon flame to heat that polearm, so on and so forth. That's not actually what this incantation calls for. Now, typically you're not going to be called out on this whenever you say this, because you're still getting across to the other player exactly which weapon you're heating. But all you actually have to say is, I call upon flame to heat that short. I call upon flame to heat that long. I call upon flame to heat that great. And then they will understand. And you have to say this 3 times. Okay? Now, the target weapon cannot be wielded for 30 seconds unless that player, again, is immune to fire. They have to drop the weapon or put it away. If they don't want to drop their weapon on the ground, they just have to sheath it. And remember, again, you were targeting the weapon, not the player. Now, you have to keep a line of sight on that weapon. If they were to hide it behind their back or hide it behind a shield, and you can no longer see that weapon, your casting is interrupted and your spell has failed. If you finish casting and it's an invalid weapon or an invalid cast, your spell is still used, and so you have to be careful on finishing your casting. You have to make sure that you are casting it at the right item, at the right player. Okay? The cost for this is 1, and you can have as many of them as you like. There is no maximum cost for heat weapons. So if you want to bring 5 heat weapons and target 5 different players, go right ahead. That is how the game is built. The next spell we're going to cover is Imbue Armor. Now, this enchantment spell is a little bit more tricky. So it is an enchantment spell. You have to put a spell strip on another player. Again, you can only cast your spells, your enchantments on other players. It is of the protection school, and it uses a white spell strip again. And the reason why I'm going to bring this up now, protection magic is generally going to be a white spell strip. Any sort of offensive magic is going to be a red spell strip. Any utility magic is going to be a yellow spell strip. Okay? So generally, if you can't remember what your spell strip you're supposed to be using, remember protection is white. Okay? The enchant for this, incantation is I enchant thee with imbued armor 3 times. And what it does is it increases the point value of worn armor by 1 point. Now, this is all of their worn armor. So you're not going to have to cast it on their chest armor and their arm armor and their leg armor. You just enchant it once and it increases the points of all of their armor up by 1 to their maximum level. Now, this can be a little tricky. A lot of players are already wearing their maximum level of armor. So if you cast Imbue Armor on them, it can't go any higher. So this is where you need to talk with your players and planning ahead for battle games of, hey, are you wearing your full armor that you can wear? And they say no. I'm like, okay, would you like me to cast Imbue Armor on you? And then do so that they can have more armor. This spell does not work on magic armor, so you can't cast Bark Skin and then also cast Imbue Armor. It will fail. Also, speaking of enchantments, players can only have 1 enchantment on them at a time unless you cast another spell on them that allows them to carry more than 1 enchantment. So you can't cast Bark Skin and Imbued Armor on somebody. Also, you can't cast magic armor on somebody that's wearing actual armor. It will fail. You can have one or the other. Okay? The cost is 1 point, and there's no cost maximum. So if you are playing with a lot of fighters, a lot of warriors that are wearing chainmail, they only have 4 points or 5 points, and their maximum is 6. There you go. Bring as many as imbued armors as you want, and hand them out like candy. It's actually a term for a lot of druids. Is candy druids, is people that hand out a lot of buffs. The last spell I want to cover is Mend. Mend is Mend's a little tricky. So it's a touch spell, and you don't have to cast this on specifically another player. You can cast this on your own equipment that you're carrying, because you're not, again, casting on the player, you're casting it on equipment. So it is of the sorcery school, and the incant is I make this item whole again 5 times. Most of your spells are either going to be three times. Some are 2, and some are 5. This is one of those 5, and it's I make this item whole again. And you have to be touching the item. So in this situation, say archer has fired an arrow and they have destroyed your short sword. You can cast Mend to make that item whole again. The problem with this is that when you die, all of your equipment comes back with you anyways. So the only time this spell is good, in my opinion, is if you have a limited lives game. and you don't necessarily want to take a death just to get your equipment back. Okay? So be careful with prepping the spell. Now, if you want to buy a ton of this spell and just mend everybody's weapons as you go, feel free to do so. Being a druid, or really any class, is what you make of it. So this destroyed or damaged item is repaired, and if you cast on somebody's armor, they only get 1 point of armor back in that specific location. This one is location specific. So if you make let's say they're wearing a breastplate and the breastplate's been destroyed by arrows, you can go up and you can repair it for 1 point. Its cost is 1, and there's no cost maximum, or there's no spell maximum for this one. So you can bring 5 mends if you want to. That is all of the first level spells and the basics for being a druid. In my next couple of videos, we're going to be talking about different schools of magic, as well as different situations like we were talking about with magic armor versus actual armor and spell theory. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody has a great day.